So belonging, inclusion and safety.
Yes.
So that came up a couple of times in our conversation. And I imagine, when we're talking about feedback and, quite rightly, never going to achieve full psychological safety.
Yes.
But, the reality of how we all show up at work, what conditions we need to thrive, are really, very different to I hope they are from when I first joined the workforce. But you've spent a lot of time in this space and you've invested time, research and kind of, exploring it. Talk to me a bit about A, why, and B, kind of what have you found in kind of spending time in this space, and what do we need to learn as leaders in sector?
Sure. So this takes me back to the Wood and Trust again.
Yeah.
Part of my leadership degree. As part of that, I had to do a work-based project, essentially the dissertation that was in a topic area that would benefit the organisation that I worked for. And we'd recently done a staff survey and there were some results in there. It was all generally pretty good, but there were some results in there that I was quite intrigued by. And it was about kind of interpersonal relationships between managers and things like that. So I wanted to do a bit of a deep dive into that and under the lens of psychological safety. And I had a couple of assumptions. The first one was that psychological safety will be different between different directorates, and how people experience psychological safety will be different between the layers, from director and down. Seems to fairly make sense. So we did an assessment on the whole organisation. They took part in a survey, and then what I did was I used the results of that assessment to pick the lowest scoring team and the highest scoring team, and then focus group them, and to understand what's happening in these teams that makes the high scoring team work and the low scoring team not as effective in terms of psychological safety. And it pulled out loads of things, but the bulk of it came down to leadership behaviour. It came down to what is it that people are role modelling that make people feel unsafe, that they don't even realise they're doing.
Yeah.
And one very, very simple quote that came out of that was a senior leader who was in a meeting, somebody made a suggestion and the senior leader immediately said, that isn't going to work. That's not right for this moment. And it's a sort of a natural reaction. Like that's a lot of people might react in that way. But what that senior leader didn't realise was that sat with that person enough to tell me 6 months later in a focus group that was a moment that they said, I don't want to feedback in a group anymore.
Yeah.
And so I just got really invested in this and thought I need to work out how I can do things that are going to help the people that I lead feel safe. And as you say, you can't get 100%, but lots of work with the team in terms of how they're feeling safe around me. So making sure that when people do give me feedback, I reward them for it, recognizing tiny interpersonal risks that people take. So even just speaking up in a meeting and saying, thank you so much for speaking up. Where people ask for help, I'm like, this is amazing. Next time you ask for help, come to me straight away. Some of them are really quite tiny, but some are also quite big. And just making sure that you're doing that consistently so that you're feeding that feedback loop of, oh, this was a good thing for me to do. David responded really well. Yeah. He didn't judge me. He didn't think any less of me. He actually recognized and rewarded me for taking that risk. They're the things that build people's psychological safety up to the point where the team now challenge me if I say something phrased in a way that I wouldn't normally phrase it. They'll go, David, you don't sound like you. What's going on? People will come up to me in the office now in the team and go, are you okay? You seem a little bit off today. Just things like that. It happens all the time in the team, and that's a really lovely thing to see.
Yeah.
I had a really interesting moment so we had our own staff survey, Prostate Cancer UK. Results came back early this year, and my department results were terrifying. I saw them and I was devastated because some of the things in there around kind of how people feel safe at work and all of that, they were really low, like amongst the lowest in the organisation. But I'd been doing all this work for 2 years to go let's make you feel all safe. So I did a load of exploring with the managers, with the team. We did some workshops. We really got into it. And actually what had transpired was in the team unit, everyone feels safe because we've built those relationships, the psychological safety between the units, between me and between them. But because they know what good psychological safety feels like, it makes the whatever the word is, with other teams who aren't part of that, it makes that feel worse. So when they were scoring about the organisation and how they're experiencing the organisation, it came out worse because they were feeling even a bigger difference between their team unit and the teams that they work with outside of that unit. And so my challenge now is, how do I translate the good work that I'm doing with my team so that they can feel safer outside of the department, challenging, asking for help, all of those kinds of things. Fascinating stuff.
Wow. I mean, it's the kind of stuff that you could just go further and further into.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to ask around psychological safety. So I am ending my current trustee term after 6 years, but it was my first trustee role. And I was actually had a lovely kind of reflection session with our co-chair of the board. And I was saying, gosh, 6 years, long time. And I don't know how I did it. I didn't know that I would be valuable speaking up in meetings. And I wondered if you've ever kind of explored that level of psychological safety when, what we're trying to do in the sector is bring diverse, inclusive, kind of like really representation, lived experiences into quite a formal governance structure where you might not necessarily feel psychologically safe.
Yeah.
I personally have for the last 6 years, and I'm now thinking, I don't know if I'll get this experience somewhere else. It's been amazing, but I was, a bit nervous about stepping into a new arena and feeling like, can I say what I think? Will I sound stupid? Will they just think, oh God, why have we recruited this trustee? Not my experience, but I wondered, what your thoughts are.
I mean, all of those thoughts and feelings are what everyone has, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of what psychological safety is. It's people's internal beliefs about how someone else might respond, even though it's all assumption based. And so that happens everywhere. And I just think that the more that leaders and other people in kind of the ether around this space can be open-minded, that can be curious with questioning, that can thank people for and recognizing those interpersonal risks, that think of there is no silly question. And there was a really great moment so we do a town hall every month where the whole organization gets together. The CEO stands up in front of everybody and is basically saying, ask me whatever questions you've got. And there was a really beautiful moment where someone we'd done loads of work on our Black Health equity strategy, loads of research, we've done loads of staff engagement. Somebody who was new in, who'd only been in, probably 5 or 6 days, asked a question in front of 200 people and the CEO, which was incredible. And secondly, asked a question that everybody else in the room knew the answer to 6 months ago and had been talking about for a long time. And the CEO responded in such an outstanding way. It's so good that I actually went up to her afterwards and said that was absolute perfect role modeling, because she thanked them for the question. They acknowledged the importance of the question. They gave them an answer without making them feel like, well, we've already got the answer over there, or so there was none of that. And in that moment, the CEO ignored what everybody else knew and focused that response on the question being asked. And it's just a really beautiful example of it.